Namaskar. Today I have Yang with me, and what we're going to do is we're going to run through a number of postures and common assists for them. We're going to start off with Sun Salutations, since for the most part those are usually done at the beginning of morning classes. Sometimes you do see them in the evening. I probably wouldn't overdo Sun Salutations in the evening, and some people have a strong objection to Sun Salutations in the evening because they overstimulate the body, and there's actually, we could do a whole video on just why you should do Sun Salutations for the most part during the day. But we're working on assisting. I'm going to start out here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to step off the mat, and I'm going to let Yong have the mat. He's going to be facing in this direction here, and you probably want to set yourself up. He had purposely seated this so that what I'll do is I'll make corrections during this whole routine. And these are things that you want to tell your students. Come up to the front of your mat, Yong. Okay, this will help a lot, because when a person steps back into a lunge, this is perfect. Because say you got a big guy or big girl, and what happens is she steps back or he steps back. You want to make sure that back foot in a lunge is on the back end of the mat and not on the floor, or in this case a rug, because a rug is a little bit more slippery. So what we're going to do here is he's going to start at the top, and we're going to just go to regular mountain pose. Good. So he's gone to an extended mountain pose, and what I'm going to do here is look at a couple of things. If I wanted to really fuss here, I have where I'm bringing his arms back. I don't want anything locked in. What I've done is I've brought it in alignment, and I didn't really do a whole lot of tugging here. Okay, so then he's going to go into a forward fold. Now as he goes into the forward fold, what we have here is a compromise, because especially with males, you have a lot of upper body development, and what happens is some males, if they have a little bit too much of a chest, what happens is they usually tend to round the spine quick and early. Okay, now the argument could be said the same for females. So I mean, it's one of those things where we have our own anatomical advantages and disadvantages in different things. So what do we do here? I ask him to bend his knees a little bit. So he's going to bend his knees a little bit, and then elongate your spine as much as you can. Good. Bend your knees a little more. Good. And then elongate your spine as much as you can. Okay? I'm not really pulling, tugging, making any adjustments here. This is verbally cueing. Bend your knees a little more. Good. And then elongate your spine. Yes? Okay. Not always going to get it perfect. Okay? For example, on this one, I might step down or kneel down, and what I do here is I put the hand right here on the top of the curve, and then this hand here. Now your neck's fine. You extend your neck where it was. Yeah, relax. And a little bit more, bringing your head down a little bit more. Yeah. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is, and you see, I've pushed him back, say, at his collarbone, and I've not really pushed at all here. I put my hand here in the thoracic area. And what I'm doing here is very little. Okay? Some people go up and they give their students bear hugs and so forth. I've seen people do things, and I'm not even going to demonstrate that. But what I'm going to say is, you got to be careful what you do here. The spine is fragile, actually. So, this is fine. Most of your students should be bending their knees a little bit, not locking them, never locking them in any posture. Okay, from here, extend your arms down. Good. And some students, you want them to just breathe nice and smooth. I can feel his breathing. So I can feel when there's a time if I wanted to make an adjustment, which I'm not going to here. Relax your head a little more. Good. Relax a little more. Good. And a little bit more. Good. So then from here I'm going to ask him, if he would, to step back with your right foot. Okay. So he's gone to a lunge, and he's not giving me any mistakes here. So on this one, what's going on is the knee, I'm trying to make it so, and this is fine what he's got. The knee is lined up straight over the ankle, okay? The lower leg is between his two forearms, okay? His palms are down. Not every one of your students is going to be able to get their palms down. And one great thing for some of your students who are having difficulty, put blocks under their hands. So that's one way of looking at lunge. Sometimes I've had even chairs I've brought out for some students. Not a problem. Okay, next thing I'm going to ask you to do is to step back into a plank. So on this one, some people get carried away, some people do different things. You want to have as straight of a line as we could have across, say, from the shoulder to the heel, something like a 45 degree. You're not always going to get that. One way for some people who start to sag, you could take a strap, which we're going to show some of that later on. Take a strap this way and start to draw up. I usually try to catch the upper hip bones here. Okay, now I'm going to ask him to come down to a posture that some of you might know as 8 points pose or caterpillar pose. So he comes down here, and as he descended, want to make one thing so that we understand the correction right now, and that is you want to make sure the elbows are in. Again, if you get somebody who's really big, and he drew it in by himself, but say if I have to make that adjustment and I come over, one way to do it is like you're in goddess pose and you start to slide down and you make the adjustment right here. So what you're doing is a sort of a straddle. Now, generally speaking, again, certain types of anatomy, it's going to be real hard for some people, especially if you get a bodybuilder in your class, to bring their elbows in really close, because there's a lot of muscle along the sides, okay, and there's a lot of muscle in the front. All those things come into play. So he's in 8 points pose, and one cue I'm going to give him is to bring your sit bones up a little higher. And even if you have to make a little adjustment with your feet yes, okay. So the point is, his stomach really shouldn't be touching in this posture, shouldn't be touching the floor. We have 8 points, that's why it gets called 8 points. Chin, chest, hands, knees, toes. There's your 8 points. Some people like to call this caterpillar. Either way. Next one, we're going to go to cobra. So he comes to cobra. A common thing is the elbows, okay? Let's go back to 8 points pose. He was in 8 points pose, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make this adjustment this way, okay? What I'm doing, and actually, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to sit in here like I'm in a half tortoise, and I'm going to draw in this way. Go ahead, up into cobra again. See, sometimes, and it depends on how much time you have in class, you can't always stop and do this to sun salutations. Go ahead, and from here, relax. Okay, so he was in cobra. The transition from cobra to downward dog is very subtle, and we're going to get into that. And then sometimes what people picture in their mind as a perfect downward dog is not always possible. Okay, we're going to come back to going into the cobra. Go ahead into the cobra again. Okay, this time I'm going to get out of the way. There is one thing that I could mention here as far as going into a higher cobra if someone's back permits. If they've got a back condition, that would not be good. And then right here, again, I've come to this variation right here, which is like a goddess pose. I've brought everything in. Now, go ahead into your downward dog. Okay, now, you want to have your feet about hip width apart. Okay, there are a number of adjustments that you can make to get someone so they have a better downward dog. One would be to, if they can bring their feet forward a tiny bit. One is, can they bring their hands back a little bit? Because the highest peak at the sit bones, that's one of the physical objectives, and probably a primary physical objective. Another one is adjusting. Some people adjust, they push here, they push here. Some people say to me, what's right? I see all kinds of different things. Actually, my first and most favorite one is this one. I have one foot through like this, so I'm set up similar to the way I would be set up in Warrior One. And I have my knee between his knees. And then what I'm going to do here is I start to draw the hip bones. Yeah, now you could actually, if you wanted to, I'm going to hold you here, let your hands walk away from me. And walk away from yourself. Walk your hands forward. Yep. So he's getting in deeper. Yep. Go ahead. A little tiny bit more. At this point, I found this to be one of the best ones. There are, I mean, you can make other adjustments. You can, for example, and I'm not going to push Yong over, but you could, for example, do this one. A lot of times, see the kind of pressure I put? It's not much. I put my hands just like this as I press. So if we start to look at different ways, some people make an adjustment like this. What they do is, and I really kind of caution you about this one because not all of your students are going to feel like they want you to get that familiar with them. But as an example, some people pull like this on the legs or like this on the inside. I tend to think, you know, you can get so much out of the other postures. And as far as, let's put it this way, if you look at this one, so many people think different things about downward dog that your primary objective, really, rather than worrying about little things, is drawing the hip bones and also see where his heels are. He's a little off. Some people, what they do is they start pulling. You know, there's a good chance that because of the ankle joint, the way it's made, that he might not be able to do a downward dog with the heels down at all. So why do I want to put him through tugging on his ankles? I can sit here and I can start to play a little bit and start to draw it down, but they still come back up just a little bit. And so it's one of those things where it might take time, but after 2 years or so of practice, you start to realize where someone's at. Okay, step forward into lunge. Okay, that step forward too, some of your students, it's going to help them to put a block under their hands. Okay, on this one, we're going to actually bring the foot forward a little bit more so it's between the hands. Good. And then go ahead into a longer, actually, no, we want to make sure the hand is, okay. Now, go ahead and step back a little deeper. Yep, okay. And breathe smooth. Okay, so we've got a lunge right here. On this variation, and one of the corrections I'm going to make right here is with the back foot. So I'm going to take this foot, yep, there we go. And I came after his back foot right here, trying to line up the heel with the hip in a straight line. Okay, beyond that, a common thing when I start to make adjustments here is where exactly is his knee. And sometimes the side camera is going to be able to pick this one up better, but is the knee in or out? In other words, is the knee lined up over the ankle in this direction? Because there is the other one too, but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lean it in just a little bit that way, and now we have it nice and straight. So there's a number of ways of looking at how the lunge itself should be set up. I'm just going to step forward into the forward fold again. Okay, relax. Okay, now we've got the same thing. Some of your students, as far as their spines go, we're going to try to draw their spine out. There's a lot of ways. Say if I want to see if I can get him to hold and root himself in. Okay, from here, yeah, that's it. And breathe nice and smooth. Good. And this is about as good as it's going to get for now. The back legs, we've got them bent, and we're just trying to get it as straight as we can. Some people will be perfectly straight, some not so. Inhale all the way up to extended mountain. Good. And he's in fine alignment. And then what I'm going to ask you to do is close off into mountain. Good. So that's the end of Sun Salutations. And what we're going to do is we're going to move on to standing postures, common standing postures.